What if I told you that for over 700 years, Africans ruled a vast part of Europe? This isn't fiction. It's the forgotten truth of the Moors in Spain, a powerful African empire that brought architecture, science, and brilliance into the heart of Europe. And yet, most people have never heard their story. In the year 711 AD, a Dalda general named Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed the Strait of Gibraltar with 7,000 African Berber warriors. They weren't just soldiers. They were visionaries, believers in a new dawn. Facing the Visigoth army, Tariq stood on the shores and did the unthinkable. He burned the ships behind them. Retreat was not an option. Victory or death. Within a year, they swept across southern Spain, seizing the Visigoth capital and planting the seeds of a new civilization. This wasn't a random conquest. It was the beginning of a cultural revolution. What followed was astonishing. For centuries, Al-Andalus, Moorish Spain, became the beacon of the world. At a time when much of Europe was plunged into the Dark Ages, cities like Córdoba were glowing with light. Literally, over 200,000 homes had street lamps, hundreds of public baths, and flowing water systems. It was a place where Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived side by side, exchanging ideas and building knowledge while castles in Europe were cold stone walls. The Moors designed palaces with mathematical symmetry, fountains, and gardens. They turned cities into living works of art. And the knowledge, mind-blowing. The Moors brought with them advanced mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. Hospitals with surgical instruments. Schools where algebra was born. Libraries with over 500,000 manuscripts. Many of the Moors, especially the Berbers, were black Africans. Their roots deepened the Sahel and Sahara. Yet they stood as professors, engineers, and scholars in Europe, changing the course of human history. Europe owes much of its renaissance to the knowledge preserved by the Moors. They didn't just conquer land, they conquered ignorance. One of their greatest masterpieces, the Alhambra Palace in Granada, a breathtaking blend of Islamic, African, and Iberian design. Look closer at the calligraphy on the walls. It's not decoration. It's poetry, mathematics, philosophy.
Every arch, every tile, every fountain was a message. Beauty and knowledge belonged together. The Alhambra wasn't just a palace. It was the Moors' way of saying, we were here, and we mattered. But empires rise and fall. In 1492, the same year Columbus sailed to the New World, the Christian Reconquista reached Granada. After centuries of brilliance, the last Moorish kingdom fell. Mosques were destroyed. Books were burned. African names and identities were erased from the story. What came next was silence, a systematic erasure of African presence from European history. The conquerors didn't just defeat an army, they buried a legacy. But echoes remain. The influence of the Moors lives on in Spanish architecture, music, and language. Words like algebra, alcohol, zenith, all from Arabic and African influence. Behind Spain's most beautiful sights are the forgotten fingerprints of black African minds. Yet, the world rarely acknowledges this African chapter in Europe's story. Why? Because acknowledging it changes everything we think we know about history. It recenters Africa as a giver of knowledge, not just a victim of colonization. The story of the Moors isn't just African history. It's world history, and it's time the world remembers. But echoes remain. The influence of the Moors lives on in Spanish architecture, music, and language. Words like algebra, alcohol, zenith, all from Arabic and African influence. Behind Spain's most beautiful sights are the forgotten fingerprints of black African minds. Yet, the world rarely acknowledges this African chapter in Europe's story. Why? Because acknowledging it changes everything we think we know about history. It recenters Africa as a giver of knowledge, not just a victim of colonization. The story of the Moors isn't just African history. It's world history, and it's time the world remember. If this blew your mind, Imagine what else they didn't teach you. Hit that subscribe button. Join Echoes of Africa as we uncover the buried brilliance of our past. Don't let history forget who we truly are. Share this story. Tell the world, because Africa's legacy deserves to be heard, loud and proud.